Hey, what's going on YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here, back again with another video, and 'tis the season for those horror games, and I got an excellent one that nobody talks about on the PlayStation Portable, so without further ado, let's talk about it. So the game in question comes to us on the PSP from the good folks at Tecmo, and this game is Undead Nights. Now this was released around 2008, 2009 or so, and again, this is definitely a hidden gem on the system. It's also an exclusive, so unfortunately you can't get it on any other platform. In this game, it takes place in medieval times. You can play as one of three members of this family known as the House of Blood. Basically, the king of the realm, he got himself a new queen who's manipulating him and eventually gets him to betray the House of Blood, and he sends his armies to slaughter them after, I guess they were a group of warriors who used to serve them, him rather. This doesn't sit well with the trio, and so they make a Faustian style pact with a demon known as the Beast, who is voiced by Steve Blum, by the way, of Samurai Champloo and Cowboy Bebop fame, among many other things, but we'll talk about more of that later. The Beast, grants them the ability to reanimate, and they come back as necromancers, and so they themselves have the ability to kill enemies and then bring them back as undead servants. So that's the premise of this game. It's kind of similar to Overlord, I think, on the Xbox 360. It's kind of like a cross between that and maybe like Dynasty Warriors. You'll go through arena style levels, and basically your goal is to wipe out all the enemies in the area, move on to the next. But the gimmick of it, or the kind of unique trait of it, is in the way you dispatch enemies. Again, I mentioned that they were necromancers, and once you kill an enemy, you have the ability to convert them into zombies, and then those zombies can then go and attack and kill the remaining enemies. It's a pretty cool mechanic that works in a bunch of different ways. First off, you can use it, as I mentioned, in general combat. Your undead minions will go and thin out the ranks of all of your opponents. You can also use them in a bunch of environmental situations, like in some instances there might be a large gap that you couldn't otherwise cross or jump across. If you string together enough undead zombies, they will climb on top of each other and make a bridge, allowing you to cross. And in a lot of instances, you get kind of like some hilarious scenarios that come up about it, and usually it'll end with all of those minions being killed, and so you'll then have to attack enemies and create more minions, and so you'll find yourself doing that a lot. The gameplay wise, as far as the combat is pretty good. You get dark energy that you can get after each level, and you can allocate that towards a bunch of different new abilities and attacks. Of course, you got 3 playable characters to choose from, so that's going to add some replay value there. The game itself is pretty bare bones outside of the single player. There was some multiplayer at some point. I think it had some ad hoc support where unfortunately you couldn't multiplayer through the levels though, which is a huge mistake. I think all you could do, kind of just play like some mini competitive games type of deal, so it wasn't really good in the multiplayer department. They should have just let you co-op through the campaign, and that would have been fine by itself. But moving on to the sound department a little bit now, I mentioned Steve Blum. There's some other actors in here. The voice acting overall, I think, is pretty good. The only knock on it might be that some of the characters, they kind of have scripted words that they say over and over again throughout the missions, and over time some of those can get on your nerves, but when it counts, I think the voice acting is pretty serviceable. Going on to the music, they chose kind of like a death metal, like heavy metal style background music for the game, and for the most part I think it works okay. The rock music for the most part sounds okay, although I don't think the sound design was taken into account. Like, it's mixed well and everything, but I feel like that in a lot of parts of the game, you know, they could have cued the music better, or in some instances they could have ramped up the music better, or I just think in some instances, like, not every scene needed a heavy metal soundtrack. I mean, I think if they had mixed it with more like orchestral music, you know, intertwined in there, I think it would have had a greater impact. But all in all, it's just okay. All in all, I just want to talk about this one. This one is not super expensive. It can be had for under $35, but this is a game that I don't see on store shelves. Actually, I'm starting to see fewer and fewer PSP games on shelves in your local retro stores. I don't know if you guys been noticing that. So definitely, if you haven't started collecting for PSP yet, definitely do that like right now. And Undead Nightmare or Undead Nights should be on the list. This is actually a pretty fantastic game, all things considered. Alright guys, so I think that's going to do it for this short little video. Just going through, gonna review a bunch of horror games this month. I'm gonna stream horror games this month, and so we're gonna keep it rolling. If you like this content, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out, and peace.